Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Happy Friday. I hope you're looking forward to a fantastically crafty weekend. Now, we've got a nice relaxing hour for you today, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a huge giveaway, so a little bit of excitement for you as well. So we're giving away over £160 worth of prizes today. Now, I need to say this right at the beginning because I always forget at the end. There are actually 3 chances for you to win today. Now, 2 of those are going to be in this live hour. All you need to do is be commenting. You may be watching on Facebook and you may be watching on YouTube. Wherever you are, if you just drop us a comment, just say hello, what you love about watercolour maybe, it doesn't matter. As long as you've commented, you are in the hat to win. And somebody in the office, I think it may be the lovely Sky, is going to be watching, picking at random a comment from each platform, and I will announce those names at the end and we will sort out a prize for you. Now, the 3rd chance is actually ongoing for a week. So if you're catching up with this live, not live, and you're watching maybe over the weekend or even Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, you are still going to have a chance to win a bundle because, you know, we appreciate not everyone can catch us live. You may be working, kids to sort out, grandkids, whatever it may be. So you can still go along to the CraftStash blog. Now, I would suggest you actually do this super quickly so you know you've got your entry in. Go along to craftstash.co.uk/inspiration and you can pop your entry in there. Even if you've entered now live, you can still put in a second entry over there as well. And that winner will be picked next Friday. So that just gives everyone else a chance of winning who can't join us live. Right, so now I've told you that, even if I forget at the end, you know, you need to go along to the CraftStash blog and enter for that giveaway too. So we are talking about watercolour today, and we're actually covering 3 different brands today. So we have got DALER-ROWNEY. Now, they are well known across the artist community for absolutely top quality watercolours, lots of other paints as well, but watercolour of course is what we're looking at today. They are absolutely fantastic, but we are looking at traditional watercolour with those today. So things like these are your tubes of watercolour paint, and I'm going to be covering those, how you water those down, how you use them and blend them and such. Then we're also looking at a brand called KARIN markers. So I've got my pot of KARIN markers here, as you can see, beautiful, juicy, water-based ink pens. And then we've also got ECOLINE, and they're hiding in this box here. Let me just grab some of these. So you may have seen these as well. Now, all of these different brands can be used in your card making, and this is what I want to show you today, is how you can use these techniques with your cards, but other projects as well, of course. So we're going to be looking at all 3 brands, comparing them, working out which ones can do what would you use a pen for as opposed to using a brush for, and so on and so forth. If you've been watercolouring a while, hopefully you can pick up some additional tips and things, but I'd also love your tips and advice in the comments. If you do use watercolours a lot and you've got your own preferences, let us know. This is all about education this hour. Hopefully you will enjoy it. Sit back and relax. Make sure you've got your comments in so you can potentially win a bundle at the end. We're actually giving away a DALER-ROWNEY bundle, a KARIN bundle and an ECOLINE bundle, and I can't tell you which is going to who. It will be a surprise when it comes to your door. But we've got offers as well, quickly, before I get into the nitty-gritty crafting bit. So as you can see here, we have got a DALER-ROWNEY offer. That is a free watercolour brush set that's worth £5.99 when you buy absolutely any of the DALER-ROWNEY paint sets. So if you go ahead to craftstash.co.uk, you'll see there's a banner on the front page, right? So if you've not been on the website before, and of course if you're in the US, that's .us rather than .co.uk. So on the home page at the top, there's a rotating banner. This is going to give you all of today's offers, and it is updated every single day, so always check back on that. If you just click through just a couple of them, you've got this offer, and when you click on the actual banner, that will take you to all the DALER-ROWNEY things. Now, for this offer, you need to put in your chosen paint set into your basket, and then you need to put in the brush set as well, and that will come off at checkout. And just for you there, I have put in the code of the brush set, so that's tool 1110, so you can pop that into your basket easily. If you just pop that code into the search bar, that will come up for you. So pop both items into your basket and anything else you need as well. So I'm going to go over lots of other products that you can use with watercolors that might be worth throwing in. When you go to checkout, that brush set will come off. We've also got from ECOLINE 25% off of all ECOLINE. Now I've put the prices here are from £1.79 because there's things like even pipettes on there that you're going to use with your watercolours. There's things like watercolour paint pads as well, but then you can go into the pen sets too. So go and take a look at those. And another absolute bargain for you today is with the KARIN markers. So if you are purchasing any of the KARIN marker sets, you get the choice of a free artist pad to use with it, and that way you know you are getting the perfect paper to use with your pens. Those paper pads are £5.99, and I say those because there's a choice of two. Now with this one, you don't need to put the paper pad into your basket, okay, because there's two. It's just much easier if we give you the offer at checkout. So pop in your KARIN markers into your basket. When you go to checkout, you will be offered which paper pad would you like to throw in for free, okay? So you just choose the one you want and you carry on with your payment. So I think that's everything with regards to the offers. Of course, you've got free delivery over £20. Why don't you come down to my desk? I've got a slightly different view for you today as well. Come down to my desk. I'll run through a few examples of watercolours here, and then I'll just read some comments in a moment as well. So I just wanted to show you, if you've never explored watercolours with your card making, what you can do with it. I mean, how can this really advance your card making? So we have got there a beautiful background. So this has been embossed and then watercolours popped into it, which makes a really quick and simple card actually, minus of course the drying time. Heat guns are very handy here. We have got a stamped image, and that's called no line stamping, where we've just stamped with a water-based ink in a nice pale colour, and then picked up watercolours with a small pen and painted them in, and it's really therapeutic to sit and paint those. Something a little bit looser, a little bit quicker and easier is to again heat emboss, but then just splodge over some colour, and you can be really nice loose with this, nice and free, just let the paints run into each other. Blended backgrounds, and this lovely straight line has been created using some tape, and I'll talk to you about masking tapes and things in a little while, but we do have things like masking fluids on CraftStash too, which you can create borders and edges and sort of seal areas so that your watercolours don't affect them, and you could do that on the two edges as well. So blended ombre techniques you can do, and of course colouring in your stamped images in detail. So rather than the sort of the loose watercolour effect that we were looking at here, really picking out the details, adding shading and adding tones and depth and things like that. So we're going to be looking at some of these techniques today and a lot more. I want to just say hello to a few people before I get started, because I very often forget this bit. So let me see, Roseanne, hello to you. She wants to learn new ECOLINE tips. They're so forgiving and perfect for travelling with too. Yes, do you know what? That's something I was actually going to say, is both KARIN and ECOLINE. If you are going away anywhere and you want to take a little bit of something crafty with you, they're absolutely perfect. Those with a water pen, a barrel filled with water with the brush on the end, easy. Of course your paper as well, but yeah, really handy. So what was the code for the brushes? Now, Catherine, thank you for your comment. There is no code to get the brushes. Oh, sorry, do you mean the actual product code? Let me just pop back for you. Here you go. Tool 1110. I had to look it up. I couldn't remember it. That's the code for the brushes. When you pop in your DALER-ROWNEY paint set, just search that tool 1110 and you'll see the brushes, pop them in your basket as well. Hello to Natalie Lewis. Hi to you. Beverly Miller. Sorry, Beverly A. Miller. The A threw me a little bit. I got tongue-tied. She uses markers and ink pads with a shot of water to paint her stamped images, so she's hoping to learn some tricks. Yes, if you love watercolour, you're going to hopefully love this hour, but I wanted to make it nice and relaxing for you. It's a Friday. I always find Fridays really busy, really stressful, so it's a nice time for me to sit and relax as well. Like I say, different view for you today. The reason being I want you to be able to see under my hands a bit more, so I'm not die cutting and such like. Let's bring in, first of all, the actual elements that we're going to be looking at. So these are the tubes. These are from DALER-ROWNEY. They are just one of the sets that you can get. They're part of their Aquafine collection, and they come in the box like this. These make a lovely gift because of the way they're packaged as well. In fact, all of the items, the 3 brands we're looking at today, make fantastic gifts. Now, because these are paint tubes, you'd be using these with something like a palette. Now, I've just popped my cards right onto my palette. So there's lots of palettes available for you over on CraftStash, and they're a really good price as well. So with these watercolours, they come really nice and richly concentrated and really quite thick. Now, as you can see, you could paint that directly onto your project if you wanted to, but if you did that, you would not get the effects that we're looking for. You wouldn't get that water running into each other, the colour blends, the different shades. So I'm just going to wet a brush and just dampen this blob of colour, and you see the richness does not fade at all, even with watering it down. Isn't that beautiful? So I'm going to pick up a bit more water and make that a bit more fluid. Now, this is now a watercolour. Straight away we can use this, but if you wanted a lighter shade of this colour, that is so pigmented, it's beautiful. I'm just going to pop a bit of water over here, just a little bit. And look, you can really lighten this up. Isn't it just absolutely gorgeous? So rich. And we're still not losing any of the colour by adding the water. This is what DALER-ROWNEY do so well. Now, I'm going to delve into these a lot more in a minute with some techniques. So I'm just going to pop this to the side for now while we just have a look quickly at KARIN markers as well. Now, KARIN markers are a pen filled with ink. Now, you can actually see the ink inside, so you start to know when you're running out. This is one. I'm not going to tip it up. Can you see the difference in the ink barrels? So let's just turn that for you that way and that way. So you can see how much ink I've got in each of those. This one's nearly halfway gone. I've had this probably for more than 2 years. And everybody knows I do a lot of lettering. These are going to last you a very long time. They are a pointed nib, they're a flexible nib. You've got all of that beautiful water-based ink inside, and they are very, very juicy. They don't dry out at all. So once you use these, you can then use your watercolour techniques for spreading the ink, painting in detail, pick up the watered down ink with a brush if you want to. They're a very clean and convenient way of doing watercolour painting. And the same goes for your ECOLINE as well. Let me just bring in some of these. Now, I'm saying some of these. I've got loads more than this. This is just a small selection. So again, these are a brush pen, and they've got the ink. You can't see inside the barrel of these ones, but as you can see, the nib is very similar. Again, extremely juicy. Now, I would say that these are a little more forgiving than the KARIN. So just for comparison, I think with these ones, the colour isn't quite as saturated as the KARIN markers. So if putting down a lot of colour at once scares you, then I would go with these. If you love your deep dark colours and the high pigmentation, you go with the KARIN. But we'll see that through demonstration. Let's get straight on to some simple techniques that you can start doing straight away. Now, let me see. Have a look at these cards. So these cards I have created using watercolour. I've created the backgrounds there. It's like your own personalised backing paper that you can make really quickly and easily, creating flowers. So they're both very similar techniques. You've probably seen these before. I've had them on videos and things before, but I really love them because it's such an easy technique. Now, this one here, I'm actually going to show you how to make those flowers now, okay, and show you how simple it is. All you're going to need is a particular type of watercolour brush, and that's one of these ones. So if we have a look at this, can you see it's got a pointed end? We call this round pointed, and it is a watercolour specialty brush. Okay, so you can use them with other paints, but they are made for watercolour here, and you get them from lots of different brands. But if you are purchasing this the brush set that's free, I just went off there, that one there. If you're purchasing the brush set with the paint set from DALER-ROWNEY, you're going to get, I think, a couple of these shapes of brushes in there, plus some additional extras that you can use. So let's take watercolour cardstock. Now, I'm going to also talk you through watercolour cardstock, because there's lots on the market, and I'm going to show you a couple of my favourites. A couple of them are the freebies that you're going to get when you purchase the KARIN markers. They're going to be options for you, but some more that we've got on the site are, we've all heard her name, Dina Wakely. So she has her own cotton watercolor paper. It is absolutely beautiful. It is actually made up of cotton fibers. Okay, so you're getting 10 sheets in here. They're around about very roughly A4. They're a bit smaller than A4. A beautiful soft feel to them, and your water just sits in place. Your colors are really lovely and vibrant on it. So that is a treat, that one. But if you're looking at doing lots and lots of watercolor, let me just bring this pad in, and you want to do lots of practicing, this is a really good one to go for, because for the price you get 100 sheets. Okay, so this is not necessarily for doing your final projects on, although of course you absolutely can. I think if you want a watercolor pad that is just going to last you a long time, you could do lots of practicing on it, this is the one to go for. It's huge. It's almost A3 in size. And I just use this and I keep chopping it up into lots of pieces. Now there's cold pressed and there's hot pressed. Cold pressed, you're going to have the texture in there. Okay, this is, the cold and hot is just the manufacturing process. Okay, so whether or not they use hot or cold to produce it. Cold, you're going to get texture in there, which is what I love about watercolor paper. I love that texture. If it says hot pressed in something, that's going to be a smooth paper, okay, and you won't get that texture that you see, but you may want the smoothness. So that is a complete personal preference. Now let's get on with these florals. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the comments as well, but I'm on my own today. So which is best for a beginner? Are you talking, Belinda, do you mean the paints or the papers? If you let me know, I will answer that, of course. Now I'm going to bring in, first of all, a paint. So shall we come back to this beautiful orange that I was using before and do some orange flowers? Now, of course, I've used blues, pinks and purples here, but to show you the technique. Now, when I used the tubes to show you earlier, I actually watered down a little bit of this paint. Let me just bring it in here. So I watered down a bit anyway. So this is slightly thinner than you would get in the tube already, and it didn't take much to mix it at all. There's no clumps, there's no chalkiness to it, it's extremely smooth. So I'm going to put on my brush some of that really quite concentrated paint on there, and what I'm going to do is just put some small dots of this concentrated paint in the middle of my page. And I'm now going to, let me bring this paint water in a little bit. I'll bring it, I'm actually concerned about knocking this over. So there's my water. Okay, I'm going to put some water on my brush. Now this is loaded up with a lot of water, but the one thing I'm making sure of, although I've got a lot on there, is that I've not got a blob of water sitting on the metal here, because that will inevitably eventually drip off onto your project. So just make sure you run the metal piece along the edge of your jar, your pot, wherever you're keeping your clean water, and just make sure you've got no excess on there, because that will eventually, or could, ruin your project. So like I say, with this pointed rounded brush, I'm just going to dip the very tip into that paint there, the very, very tip. Let's see the best angle for you here. So the tiniest bit, it's just clean water on here, and I'm going to press down and pull out like so. And then I'm going to clean my brush off again, and I'm going to do it exactly the same with clean water. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the shape of the petals as well by pressing down and lifting up. Now let me just show you that again. So the very tip into the paint, press down and pull out. Depending on how much you put into the paint, depends very much on how much that spreads, but you can add a little bit of water to help that spread if you want to. Again, clean water. I'm going to do the other side of the petal. Now let's look at getting those shapes again. So the very tip is going to give you a thin line, as you can see there, but just popping the tip into the colour and then pressing down, hopefully you can see there the bristles sort of spray out, giving you a thick line, and then at the end I'm going to lift up back to the very tip touching and give me a back to a thinner line. So we're kind of creating this leaf or petal shape there, and I'd like to do the two sides because I love having the look of a gap in between. Now let's do a darker one again. So that means just pressing a bit more into the paint and allowing that to come in a little bit more. Now If you're doing this and you're thinking, well, that's starting to dry in the middle, you can, while it's still all damp, you can just touch that paint back into the ends of each of the petals, and that colour will run into your petals again. Let's do a fifth. I feel uneasy if this doesn't have 5 petals, so one more just here. Spray those out. Now I've done this really quite large, hopefully, so you could see what I was doing. If you're painting like this and you like what you've put down in some areas but some are a little bit dark, what you can do is completely dry your brush off. So I've cleaned it with water, and I'm just going to take some wet paper towel, dry paper towel, and I'm going to dry my brush. And with a rounded pointed brush, I always dry by pulling towards me, just to keep that from fraying and to keep that nice point. And what I can do now is I can just press the tip of the brush into the petal where the excess ink is, and I can lift some of that up. So just take the excess water off again, and I can do that again here. Hopefully you can see that is lightening up the end of that petal. So there's a watercolour flower. Now, of course, once you do that in a few different colours, you're going to have a beautiful background. Let me just do one more for you. What other colour shall I choose? Shall I do a nice yellow? I wonder if yellow is going to actually show up enough, but we shall see. So I'm going to put my paint on my palette there, and you can mix colours as well, of course. You can absolutely be mixing. So maybe we will add some water to the yellow, just to water that down a little bit to start with. That's beautiful. I'm going to bring in a little bit of this orange to this yellow actually, just to warm it up a little bit so it works quite nicely with the orange that we've already put down. If we're doing a background, you ideally want about 3 colours of similar tones. And that's a good way of keeping them all cohesive. I'm then going to drop my saturated paint into the middle, and let's work on those petals quickly. Now I'll do this much quicker than I did before, just so you can see those techniques again, and then we'll move on because I've got a lot more techniques to show you. And with this, with any watercolour, oops, I just dropped the end of my paintbrush, so there we go. With any watercolour, I prefer not to overthink it, okay? I prefer to just go in quite quickly and see what happens, because if you overthink it, I think you lose the looseness of watercolour, which is kind of the idea, isn't it? That the colours flow in. Look at this, I'm just picking up a bit of extra colour and just dipping it into the middle and letting it flow out. Now I'm just going to pick up from this petal with the dry brush again. They actually call it a thirsty brush, and if you know the brand Thirsty Brush, that's kind of where it comes from. So just picking up any excess. Now what I do love as well is that the yellow has bled a little bit into this orange petal here, and that's going to give you fantastic results as well. Let me set this aside flat to dry while we move on to another type of technique, and then we will come back because they need to stay flat to dry. Right, you can do the same, by the way, with your pens. So if you want to, you can do exactly the same with your pens, simply by dotting down colour with your pens. And I would say probably KARIN markers are the best ones to do this with because they are more saturated. As I spoke about earlier, they are a little more juicy than the ECOLINE, although both are equally fun to work with. And again, you can do exactly the same, as you can see. So I believe these were done with a watercolour paint, but as you can see, very identical results. Right, let's move on quickly because I have a lot to show you. I don't know where to put everything to allow things to dry. I want to show you a little bit about the pens now. Let me just go back through the comments very quickly. Are there glitters or shimmers that would work well with these? Yes. So, Roseanne, for glitter or shimmer in your watercolour, I would 100% recommend Spectrum Noir. Do some glitter inks. They're in pots. I can't remember the exact name, but if you check out Cosmic Shimmer. They have some fantastic shimmery, almost like watercolours. Let me see. Watercolours do the shading for you. They absolutely do, Beverly. They really do. Let me just check. I'm just trying to see whether that has. No, I can't see your reply. Sorry, love. Who I was speaking to earlier about, is it the paper or the paints for beginners? For beginners, I would say pens, and I would say the Goldline Watercolor Studio pad. Now let's look at ECOLINE just for a moment. So the differences between the pens, there's not a lot. I did a little bit of an overview earlier, but if you have a look, the nibs are very similar sizes, but let's just do some. So I love my hand lettering, and there are lots of different video tutorials out there for hand lettering. If you pop over to Craft World, you'll find lots of them on there. So for learning, you've also got lots of templates, but these pens are absolutely beautiful for hand lettering, and this is what I use them to start with for, before I started using them for like watercolor painting techniques. So with these, the reason I'm using here a book page is to really show you that the ink just doesn't bleed. You know how porous a book page is. If it was going to bleed, it would do. And if I just turn that round for you, you can see how gorgeous is that. So that's that really juicy ink. You can get your thick and your thin lines on there. Like I say, lots and lots of templates for hand lettering online. Now I'm just going to do exactly the same word in the KARIN markers. Now the noticeable difference is that the thicker lines with the KARIN are a little bit thinner. So they're not quite as chunky as ECOLINE. Okay, but it is minute difference, and you may prefer one look over another, but again, the ink is not bleeding or wicking into the paper. It's sitting exactly where it should. Now, if you love to do your hand lettering and you're looking at brush pens for this sort of technique, I'm just going to show you just one pad that I love to use for this, and it's a Canson Bristol. So anything that's Bristol smooth will work really well. Things like marker paper as well. So a lot of different pads made for markers, for like your art colouring and things like that, manga and such, they are going to be perfect for using with your pens. Essentially, you want a really smooth paper. Now, I've been a bit naughty going onto book page because it's not smooth, but I wanted to show you how they react on a paper that's not made for it. So you could use these pens on any paper you've got, as long as you're careful with the nibs not to fray them on a really rough paper. So I wouldn't usually use them for lettering like this, dragging them along the page on a watercolour paper because of the texture of it, unless of course it's hot pressed and then it's nice and smooth. But most of my watercolour paper will be cold pressed. Okay, so that's the difference between the ECOLINE and the KARIN. And I just need to flash up again for you that deal that we've got with KARIN, because KARIN comes in so many different colours, and you will absolutely fall in love with them. You really will. And you'll see again throughout this hour, I've got so much more to show you, how you can use pens to do your everyday watercolour painting with. You don't have to use your paints. And we've got that deal, of course, where you're going to be able to get the choice of the two pads when you're popping any KARIN marker set into your basket. And then the ECOLINEs all have 25% off, no code required. All of the prices are already discounted. Now, I have here for you, I've just stamped a background stamp and I have heat embossed it onto 3 pieces of paper, because what I want to do is colour each of these very quickly, or part of them, with a paint and with each of the pens, so you can see the difference. You can see maybe which one might work for you better. So let's bring back this watercolour paint. Now I've got paint in there and that's not yet dried, but look at me, I've got pen on me already. It doesn't take me long to get mucky. So we've got colour in here. Now if this was to completely dry, the beauty of it is you can reinvigorate it if you want to. So you can then pop in a little bit of water, mix it in, and you have got a ready to go watercolour all over again. Now some people will fill up, so when you get a pan of the hard cubes of watercolour paint, some people will actually refill those with tubes like this and allow them to set and dry because they know that they can reinvigorate them, and it may just be the easiest or most cost-effective way of them replenishing their stock. Let me just pop in here a brown. We're going to do a nice sort of sepia tone background to this one, so just a tiny amount, and you really do need a small amount. This is still almost a brand new tube, and for a wash as such, I'm going to use a different type of watercolour brush, but I'm just going to add a little bit of water, just start to mix this up so that it's just watered down a touch, and then I'm going to pick up a bit more water and blob it in. And this is what I love about the palettes. So the palettes are really, really inexpensive, and they are well worth you picking up one if you're picking any paints or brushes up, because you're going to find even with the pens, you can mix them in this. Again, oh, I've got another lettering technique I was going to show you with the pens, completely forgot, but I will come back to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wet the surface. As you can see, I've got a little bit of water, of orange in my in my water. I can't keep going and getting clean water. I should have maybe had 3 or 4 pots, but do you know what? 3 or 4 pots of water for me just simply mean I've got 3 or 4 chances of knocking something over. Now I've just gone over the surface with that supposed to be clean water. I'm going to just lift off round the edge with my kitchen towel to keep that in there as much as possible. Now already, because of the small amount of paint that I've got in my paint pot, you can see it's starting to sit and colour a little bit darker in some places, which is a really nice subtle effect. But I'm just letting that soak into the watercolour paper. Now here's a tip for you. If your watercolour paper is reasonably thin and it's doing this, it's bending, what you want to do is I'm just going to bring in very carefully, so as not to hopefully knock anything down, this, just so I keep my mat clean, is just wet the reverse as well. So what's happening is the water on one side of your paper is allowing those fibres to stretch as they absorb the water, and that causes the curve. So if you dampen the other side as well, so it's all evenly wet, there we go, look, it's laying nice and flat. Now I'm going to keep this on this mat now because the back's wet, and you shouldn't get too much curling. If you do, when it's dry, pop it under a book. Now let's just get a little bit of brown paint, and I want to really water this down, so I'm going to put with a mop brush, this is what this is called, is a mop brush. I'm going to pop that water into there. I had a little bit of the brown paint on the end of there, so I've made that a nice brown mixture, and I can just give this a wash over with the brown first of all. Can you see that resist coming through? Now with paints you can cover a large area very, very quickly. Okay, now let's go into the center with the brown and let's blend this out so it's darker in the center and then a bit lighter on the outside. Easy. Can you see it just all blends itself nice and easily for you, and that will continue to work its way out. Now I am going to pick up small bits of brown and just paint in areas, and that resist is going to hold on to the colour, so it's going to keep it exactly where I put it. So I'm just running it in areas. I'm doing this quite dark. You can do lots of different tones, but I want you to be able to see. So I'm just putting down a little bit of heavy paint for now, just very randomly. In fact, this is very similar to something Lou Withers was doing with this same stamp set not long ago. If you caught Ready Steady Craft, she was doing something similar. So I've just gone along some edges there, picking out detail dipping into the corners. Now I'm going to wet my brush so it's nice and clean, and where I need to, I'm just going to use the wet brush just to blend out, but this is doing a really good job of blending out areas on its own. It doesn't need much help at all. It's actually starting to look as if it's kind of like a burnt effect, a burnt wood effect, which is perfect. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, you can pick out areas, and of course you can always use a heat tool to dry this off if you want to, but that is super duper quick with the paint, as you can see. Now I would leave that and then I'll come back to it later, and that could well be finished. So I'm just going to pop this to the side. I've got lots of surfaces around me, so I'll pop that to the side for now, so we can go and do that with the pens instead, and maybe later we'll come back and we'll see that all finished, because it will tone down ever so slightly as it dries. So I have another one here, exactly the same. So I'm going to give it the same treatment. I'm going to wet it. I've got my oranges in there. We'll pick out, so we'll do some different colours this time, and I'll show you can do exactly the same. So we'll wet the front, and just to prevent this, here we go, it's starting to bow there. Just to prevent that, we're going to do the other side as well. I'm flicking water everywhere because I'm going nice and quickly. I'm not keeping an eye on the time, everybody, either. I apologise, and I'm trying to look at the comments, and it's just impossible. So I will go back and read the comments afterwards. If you've got any questions, I'll try and answer those as well. Yeah, these are fantastic with stamp and die sets. They're just another way of being able to colour your images in, something very different to your usual sort of inks and such. How do you know how much water to put on the card, Roxy? So if you can see your water pooling in places, you've probably got too much. If your water's dripping off of the edges, it's probably too much. But if you can pick up your paper and nothing's actually dripping off of it, it's probably a pretty good amount. So I'm just going to take the excess off from this mat. Okay, so as long as you've got nothing dripping and it's kind of soaked in, but you can add more water. It's a little bit harder for you to then take it away. So let's move to pens. Shall we come into the KARIN? Shall we do blues this time? Now I want to do an overall wash of a blue. If I was to take my pen and scribble all over this, I've got extremely saturated ink that would, it would work, but it would be a very dark colour. So I'm going to pop a little bit of blue down there. I'm going to take this wash brush, this mop brush again, and look, I can dilute that. Okay, so I've now got my blue wash. I can brush that over. Bear in mind I've got a bit of brown on here, so it's a little bit got a little bit of a warm blue, but that's fine. We've got our blue down there, and then taking the same colour again. What I advise is, although you can pick it up, it's not an issue, is try not to put your tip into water, because it will soak up a little bit of water and it will just dilute the ink for you for a few moments until it runs through. It's not a major problem, but unless you're looking for a diluted ink look, I wouldn't do that. So I'm just going to now again dab in some of that slightly darker colour. So I've used the same ink, there we go, and I'm just popping it in the middle just to give us that effect of it being darker in the middle and lighter on the outside. Again, looking for any areas where it might be pooling. And with watercolour, do give it time to settle. If you put something down and immediately you don't like it, give it 5 minutes, because the water will work its way out. Okay, so you always need to just give it time to do its thing before you decide you definitely don't like something. Now the beauty of the pens, I'm going to come in with a slightly lighter shade here, is they are, oh, I haven't got a lot of ink left in this one. This was one of my favourites as well. They are extremely saturated, they are very juicy, and when you do put the pen onto the paper, the water or the paper is going to suck the ink out and you're going to get a very deep dark colour. So can you see that? Isn't that beautiful? So I'm going to do the same. So I find pens a little bit cleaner than the paints, just more precise because you've got such a fine tip, and of course you don't have to keep recolouring the tip. There we go. Now I'm going to let that do that thing. I'm not its thing. I'm not going to go in and start manipulating that just yet. I'm going to give it a minute. I'm coming in with a purple as well, and I'm going to do the same. Oh, it's just a beautiful colour. And you can mix, blues and purples are probably my favourite. You can mix the colours into one area as well and just watch them bleed together. Shall I do that? Let's see, I'm just going to do it here. So I'm just going to put some purple next to that area. It's mesmerising, it really is. Putting down this deep dark colour and then just letting it do its thing. Okay, beautiful. You'll find eventually, because you're putting this onto wet paper, that will start to dilute the nib a little bit. If it does that, just pop it upside down just for a minute and then come back and it'll be good as new. One more colour, just so I'm hoping you can see the way it is just blending into that water, that damp paper nicely. It's so relaxing to watch. There we go. So I've got some greens in there as well. Don't forget, everybody, if you've not yet commented, if you've joined us and you're kind of just watching, don't forget to just drop us a little comment, and then you could be winning either a KARIN marker bundle, an ECOLINE bundle, or a DALER-ROWNEY bundle, and each of them, or all three of them together, they total over £160. So as you can see there, I've got my gorgeous colours, but you can of course go and manipulate them a little bit more. A damp brush, just dragging. So really what I'm actually doing is adding water to the area and just dragging that out a little bit more. Not a lot, because I like the contrast with the dark areas. And you don't even have to be cleaning off your brush between colours if you've used colours of similar tones. I will take photos of all of these that I've done close up, and hopefully we'll get them posted on social media later today so you can really see the detail in them, because I appreciate I've got bright lights here that's reflecting off everything that's wet. They're just so easy to do and so relaxing for fun backgrounds. Now of course the ECOLINE pens are very similar as well. Again, I'm going to set that aside to dry with the paint one, so we can come back and look at the difference later and see how much that colour has or hasn't faded. Let's pop that to the side there. Okay, now there was another technique that I really wanted to show you. I'm just trying to find a piece of paper that's going to be perfect for doing this technique on for you. This will work. There we go. So it needs to be smooth because I want to do the ECOLINE pens. Okay, so this is back to lettering very quickly, but it's something that can't very easily be done with the paints. Okay, so you need to do this with the pens. So I'm going to lay down some ink out. Look how juicy this ECOLINE pen is. Now when you're looking at KARIN and ECOLINE, besides the very few differences that I've picked up for you throughout this hour, really I think it's going to be about the colour combinations in the sets that are available. So ECOLINE tend to come in more of a range of colours in each set, whereas KARIN, they do their big sets with lots of colours, and they do their smaller, I think they're 12 packs of all blues, all greens, all neutrals and such. So it really depends on the sort of colours you're looking to purchase and what your budget is. So what I'm going to do now is, because these are so juicy, we can do this, I'm going to swipe through that green with the pink, okay, and then I'm going to letter. So of course we have a purple colour to start with until it comes back to the pink. So I'm going to do that again, pick up the green, and we have purple shades to this. Let's add some more here. In fact, I'm wondering if I use, see that's all clean now, so I can pop the lid back on that. If I use a slightly paler pink, I'm hoping you'll be able to see this even better. There's that green, there we go, and the purple. Now let's just work this through. As you press down and more of the ink is coming out, that will clean even quicker. Look at all the different colours we've got running through there. Let me hold that up for you. So we've got purples and we've got greens and blues and pinks all running through. Again, when it's dry, you'll be able to see this much easier, but that is like rainbow colouring so quickly and simply. Hello to Val. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got so many of you that I've probably forgotten or not seen to be able to say hello to. Which set blend easier, Karen has asked. If it's for these two, I'm actually going to do some blending now, so you'll be able to see. If you're talking about the sort of blending I'm going to do right now, Karen, then this will answer your question for you, hopefully. Let me just clean this up. Again, this is all water-based, so everything cleans up really quickly, but I always like to keep some spray water, just plain water, for cleanup, and this is for most things, to be honest. So rather than using wet wipes, I like to use kitchen towel and water, but that is a preference. Now, I've splattered this a little bit today whilst I've been working, but that's okay. I'll forgive myself because I've been throwing paint around everywhere. I'm going to do a technique now where we're laying water down and we're allowing the water to hold it in place. Now, as I said before, you can use masking fluid, and that's absolutely fine to use. You can use that and you can mask off areas that you want to and keep your paint in place. That's ideal if you're actually masking to paint over areas. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how masking fluid works as well as this technique. So I am going to just mask off the bottom of this S. I've pencil drawn the letter S on this piece of cardstock here. Well, I don't know what sort of paint was on this paintbrush before. It's kind of a brown colour, but it's fine. So I've just dipped into the masking fluid and I'm just going to paint it all the way around. This will dry within a few minutes. Give it maybe not even as long as 5 minutes to dry, okay? And then you can paint over it. So pop that on there. I think that's enough to be able to show you how masking fluid works with watercolours. Straight away you need to clean off your masking fluid brush though. That's very important. So let me flip this and work on this side of this S first. So what I'm going to do now is I'm working on a watercolour paper. This is the Gold Line watercolour paper, and I'm going to wet the area inside the S and that area only, and really quite saturate it as well, quite a lot of water. And I'm going to do a smallish area like so. So I go quiet when I'm concentrating, I apologise everybody. There we go. So I've just wet. You can see by the orange tinge which bit I've done. Now let's see, what colours shall we use? We've got a lovely bright blue here. So I've now got a KARIN marker. I am going to just run along the edge there. Look at that start to bleed. Isn't that? I'm just touching the very tip into the water. But do you notice it's not bleeding anywhere other than where I want it to be? Okay, now let's go in with pink along that edge, and let's do some pink along this edge as well, and on the inside here. Okay, and lastly let's put some yellow in there. So we'll get lots of different colours, the blue and the yellow together. I'm just going to colour in the middle there with the yellow. It's not as wet in the middle there, so we're not getting quite as much of a blend. Now Karen, hopefully this will answer your question. I feel for blending that KARIN is probably the easiest. I'm just going to allow that water to work into it. So I'm planning on the yellow and the blue being green, and then the pink and the yellow, you'll get orange shades. We'll have a complete rainbow through here. But essentially what I wanted to show you was that the paint will stay where the water was. It won't go beyond where you've placed that water, and this is the beauty of watercolour paper. It's so much fun to work with. Let's just drag that up there, create a beautiful purple in there. we've got so many colours. And then if I add a bit more water here, that's going to allow those colours to start to drift down here as well. Can you see that, everybody? It's just stayed where I put the water. I've not had to be too precise with it. I mean, I've gone along the edge with my pen, but you could have just dabbed the pen, let's see, don't want to lose my paintbrush. You could have just dabbed the pen directly in the middle and let the colour work its way out instead if you wanted to. I now feel like I need to blend that out before I go any further. Just think, if you need a card for somebody, you can just do their initial like this. Isn't that just gorgeous? Okay, so shall we have a look at this masking fluid? So that's almost dry. Let's do it with the ECOLINE, shall we, for a little bit of difference. So with the ECOLINEs, you can do this in a palette or you can do this on your mat. I'm going to give it a pink wash. Not too dark, so lots of water, picking up a little bit of ink. Yeah, that's dry enough. So masking fluid kind of goes like rubber, okay? So it's a bit like a rubber, but it will peel when it's fully dry. It will peel off of your project quite easily. So there's, I've just masked off the edge there, and it looks much neater once you peel it. So I'm just going to quickly give that a blast just to dry that off, that pink wash off, and we'll add some, maybe some leaves to that. We can do like an image inside of the S here. So don't forget, everybody, to get your names in. Make sure you've commented, even if you've just joined us. As long as you're commenting, you could be winning one of the bundles. I'm just going to flip the details for you because we've got lots of different offers on today. So we've got an offer on ECOLINE, is already reduced. Everything's 25% off, or more than 25% off some items. Then we've got KARIN markers. You've got the choice of 2 of the pads that you can use with the markers, and then of course you've got the what's the other one? Oh, the brush set. It's on the screen now. The brush set with the DALER-ROWNEY paint set. There we go. So now I'm using paint, so you can overlay all sorts of different watercolors. Okay, so I've given this wash a little bit of a dry, and I'm just going to show you now. I've watered down some green, how you can go over the masking fluid. So I'm going to add some leaves to this. There we go. So I'm just going right over the edge and in here. No, I've got absolutely no design whatsoever here. We're just adding some leaves in there. Now, again, I'm just going to dry that because I want to peel off the masking fluid, and if the paint's still wet, I don't want to be disturbing that. So very quick dry. And when you're drying, if you do need to dry your watercolour off, I advise air dry where you can, where possible. But if you do need to dry it off with your heat gun for any reason, make sure you do both sides because it prevents that paper curling in any one direction. Now let's see, usually I like to set this aside to cool for a moment. Let's just see, we can now peel away that masking fluid. Can you see that orange? That is what was on my paintbrush. I didn't realise I didn't have a perfectly clean paintbrush. But you can take the masking fluid away and you've got your pink edge, excluding the orange, of course. Everyone makes mistakes, but you can see how we've masked off the edge of the letter nice and neatly. So you can just throw your paint around, remove the masking fluid by peeling it off afterwards, and you've got a perfectly masked area. And now that's dry, how beautiful does that look as well? Gorgeous. Okay, I've got more techniques. I've got lots of techniques. I'm going to do, let's just clean this off. Let's use the, we could use the pens, but I'm going to use the paint instead, I think, just for a difference. Let's pop down a little bit of water on here and some paint into the water. So we're going to be really quite rough with this. I'm not going to be too precise. I'm going to a little bit of blue. We could even actually mix the paints and the pens if we wanted to. Just water down this blue a little bit. Bring some of this in. There we go. And then let's bring in some brown. So I've got a KARIN marker with some brown on. It's actually quite a green coloured brown. This is called cinnamon. So I'm just trying to get into the edges there. So a little bit of brown going on in there as well. Now, water spritz, just to start everything mixing off nicely, and let's do the smooching. Now, you've probably seen smooching done many times before with your distress inks and your distress oxides, but of course you can do it with actual watercolour paints. So I like to do it with a clear mat so I can turn it over and I can see what I'm doing. So I'm holding this down now and allowing that paint to hit the watercolour paper and for it to absorb. Now this is all, can you see this movement? That's because I've accidentally in the past heated up items whilst they've been sat on this resistant mat. It's not good for the mat, it makes it warp, so I do need to sort that out, get another one. But let's just lift this off now and let that run. Now I'm going to dry this off. It all looks a little bit messy at the moment. Once it's dry, if you want to, if you've got any areas that you want to, I quite like the drips in there as well. You can see the different shades in there. They're very subtle, but they're there. And when you're heat drying, you get the lines, so you get like what I call tide marks in your paint, so darker areas. If you leave it to air dry, you won't get that so much. Not much at all, actually. So I'm starting, my paper's starting to bow, so I'm just going to heat from underneath for a moment. Hopefully you can hear me while the heat gun's on. Yeah, so Natalie said she uses this effect on her cards a lot. It's really effective and it's really easy as well. No, you're right, Cheryl, it doesn't use much paint either. So there we go. So I've got a couple of wet bits still, but you can see now what I can do is go back in if I want to and add some more where I've got gaps. So this is the beauty of using, so I've got a CraftStash ink blending mat and that's what I use. There we go, and dry that again. I'm just going to sit that there, and while I'm drying that, I'm going to take a wet wipe, or a wet kitchen towel, sorry, and just clean off. See, multitasking. Do it all the time when I'm crafting, for speedy crafting. Clean up whilst I'm drying things, for example. Okay, that's almost dry there. It's just that little blob there. Now with watercolours you can do the same effect as you would with your distress inks, if you've seen it before, where you splash water on it and you lift up the colour. For those who don't know what I mean, if you add water droplets like so, allow it to sit on your watercolour just for a moment or two. I love that background, looks really fun. It almost looks like oh, do you remember Sam Calgott had that fantastic paper pad that just sold out so quickly? It had all the golds running through, like the Geo paper. It looks a little bit like one of those. I think if you popped in a metallic watercolour ink, paint and did this would be amazing. Okay, so I've allowed that to sit just for a moment. I'm just going to absorb up that water, and it's very subtle. Can you see? So there's the biggest blob, the easiest to see. You've got that. Now if you leave that longer, of course it's going to dilute the paint even more for you and leave you with bigger blobs. Now another technique for you. I'm going to make a very quick card with this one because I'm aware that we've not even made a single card today. We have got, what shall we use? I think I'm going to go with, I'm not so sure about the cinnamon. I'm going to go with the black. Now I've got a stamp set. Now this, I must admit I haven't checked if this is available on CraftStash, but this will work with absolutely any stamp you have at home. I'm just going to go over the surface of the stamps using the pen on its side so as not to damage the tip, and I'm just allowing that ink to brush over so you can now stamp with your pens. It's an absolutely wonderful technique. So easy to use. This is lots and lots of different stamps all together, but of course you can use just one and be more precise about where you're placing it. You can actually do multicolored stamping with your pens as well. They don't dry ridiculously quickly. Now you can't do this with alcohol pens because of course the speed in which the ink dries and the surfaces that they dry on, you'd just be staining your stamp. But you can with water-based pens. Now this is a little bit warped. I'd probably suggest, if you can, try to tape down your paper flat. So I'm going to do it this way and just press into the stamp. Now I'm looking for a distressed image. Bear in mind that some of my stamps, where they are actually placed on the block because they're together, are upside down. And then look, we've got our print. So, and you can just wipe this, you can just clean this up again, a damp piece of kitchen towel, because it's all water based. It all comes off beautifully, nice and clean, or as clean as my stamps ever get anyway. So I have got one here, and with this one, what I did is I flicked it with water and allowed the water to react. So this one's obviously much darker, but I allowed the water to react with that black, and a few splodges, let it drip a bit, and then dried it. So very, very quick card. This is actually great for a masculine card. I'm just going to glue that on. Do you know what? I've got all my paints out. I haven't even got my glues out yet. So let's just see if my glue's ready to be used. I think it is. I hope it is. Yeah, it's a fine tip one, but we'll glue this down. Should have used foam tape really, I think. There we go. Probably enough glue. Watercolour paper doesn't need any particular type of glue either. You can use all of your glues that you have at home for everything else. Just use them in exactly the same way. The only reason I'm using this background is because of course it's already dry. My other one would take a little while to dry, and then you ideally want to be popping it into or under a book or something. I'd say heat it up and then pop it straight under a book or something heavy. Some people even put it under the cushions of their sofa between books and things, so when they sit on it in the evening it's nice and flat. And then I'm just going to use, so these are from Olga Directorenko's Lost in Music collection. So I'm just going to use these to create a very quick card. If I can just find my, I need to start, oh dear, I used it up. I love CraftStash foam tape. Okay, so I'm just starting a fresh one because I did use it up at home earlier. So let's see. Bit of paper crafting for those who love your paper crafting. Yes, you can stamp with the pens. They are so easy to apply to stamps in tiny, tiny little areas that you can actually mix all your colours and things like that. So yeah, absolutely perfect for stamping with. So popping, I've got a little bit of water under my mat here. I hope this view is okay for you all. I thought while I was writing and painting and things, you'd be able to see a bit more today like this. Let's see, and another one. There we go. So just a range of guitars here that I've got from Olga's collection, and then the word celebrate. I don't know why it's on pink cardstock, but it'll all be hidden away because I've used the white on the back. Look how well watercolour just works with all of your paper crafting goodies. So there's a quick, very masculine card for you with a grungy background that you can create with your watercolour pens. I think I've just got one more technique to show you now, very quickly. Pop my rubbish away. And that's going to be, I'm going to do the pens again. Now most of the techniques you can use with the paints and the pens together, but for this one you do need to use it with the pens, okay? So what I'm going to do is a little bit of lettering. Let's use the blue, and I'm going to use KARIN marker because I love this colour blue. In fact, here we go. So I'll just write the word hello again. Like I say, online there's a lot of templates for lettering. If you've want to learn, if you've never learned before, if you'd like to have a go, there's lots. If you pop over to Craft World, we've got templates and videos on there as well. Okay, so I've just written the word hello in a blue pen, okay? And you can allow it to dry first, or you can just go ahead, and I'm going to spritz this with water and allow that to wick, okay? Just a little bit. And while that's working, I want to make sure my paper stays down flat. I don't want it to drip off the edges. So that's as far as I want that to wick. I don't want it to go any further. It would continue to bleed a little bit if you completely saturated the paper. I'm just going to dry this off, and it won't take very long at all. This would be really good if you did it in rainbow colours, so each letter was a different colour. How good would that be? And see how quickly this is all drying. Again, I've got to be careful because I've got my mat underneath. I'm always making that mistake. I'm just drying off. I'm going to dry from underneath, like I say, just to prevent that warping, just to straighten the paper out again. And it carries on because it's still heating up your paper. You carry on drying things off. There we go. And I'm just going to dab off any excess there now. So I've got a very almost underwater looking word, but you can emphasize that just with your, so I've got a black, and go directly back over the wording again, just to bring back that detail. Now I do a very similar stamping technique for this, using my stamping platform. There's one, going right back over. You can pencil the word, of course, first, and then you've got your kind of splodgy letters with your detail over the top. Now this one's the one I just did. Here's one I did, and I wrote the word you as well, just using the very tip of the brush pen there, just because you've got the fine tip, so you can do something like that. Again, do you know what, I'm actually going to, I was saying I was going to make a card, but I seem to have mislaid everything that I needed to make it, all my bits that I was going to, oh no, they're here, I've got them, it's fine. I'm terrible, I've got so many things out, because you can use watercolours with so many different elements. It means I've got everything out. I've got all my paper crafting things out, I've got all my paints out, absolutely everything. So I will just show you those the two close-ups of the embossed images before we start to announce winners. Now I'm hoping we should have, oh, we've got winners' names. Yeah, it's that time, because I have overrun today, everybody, so I apologise for that. So just picking up my piece of paper first, and this is all cut to size with the border around the edge to match the lettering. There we go, hello you. It's a little bit different, isn't it? Especially if you just want to say a quick hello to somebody. I mean, that is just, it's just lovely. It's all you need sometimes. Okay, one more thing is to show you these. I think that's all of my techniques. I mean, there's lots more that I could show you. So there's the brown that we actually did with the paints, and there's the pens. Obviously I use different colours for the pens. There's really very little difference. Essentially you have got watercolour paint or ink inside the pens as well, and you can use them in very, very similar ways. Okay, there really is not much between the two at all. So I think that's everything I needed to show you today. Lots and lots of techniques. I mean, we've done flowers for the cards, we've done masking and how to keep your water within an area. We've done our blended hello there. We've done the smooching background. See, smooching to me is like kissing. Well, that means kissing. We've used our pens to create different rainbow effects. There's absolutely all sorts, and of course these as well, there's all sorts here, and I haven't even touched the surface really. I could do this for 3 hours and still keep showing you techniques. That's what I love about watercolour. It is my absolute favourite medium, and we're giving you deals on 3 different watercolour brands today. So you have got the choice of pads when you're purchasing KARIN today. Then you've got the 25% off of ECOLINE as well. Then you've got the free brushes if you're purchasing from DALER-ROWNEY. Now you've got to actually put the brushes into your basket, and that's why I've given you the code there, tool1110. Now don't forget, if you're not a winner that I'm going to announce in just a moment, you can pop over to craftstash.co.uk/inspiration to be in with a chance of winning that third bundle. We'll announce, or we don't usually announce it, we contact you privately, but we pick the winner the following Friday. It gives everybody who's not watching live, if you're watching on catch up, you can still enter to win one of the prizes. But the 2 live winners today are from over on YouTube. We have, I hope I'm saying your name right, Pooja. Fingers crossed I've said that right. I apologise if not. You are our winner. Please contact, ideally, CraftStash Customer Services is the easiest way to get hold of us. And on Facebook, we have Wendy Wallace. So congratulations to you as well. Now, you are either going to be winning a KARIN marker bundle, an ECOLINE bundle, or a DALER-ROWNEY bundle. But either way, hopefully from everything I've shown you today, you will have some new tips and techniques for using them. And I'd love to see what you make as well. Thank you so much, everyone who has been commenting and actually supplying lots of advice and tips of your own in the comments. I've seen them flicking through. I can't read all of them while I'm demonstrating. I will go back and look at them all now. I'll answer any more questions that you've asked that I didn't answer live. And if there's anything else, please do feel free to message me. If you message me on Lou Collins Designs, then I will get back to you. Otherwise it goes through kind of customer services before it gets to me, so it's a little bit quicker. But yeah, fingers crossed I've answered everything, and I will see you again next Friday. We have brand new launches from Daisy Made Designs, and I said launches. So there's lots to show you there. I've got the lovely Claire Rowlands with me demonstrating those. Of course, there's going to be huge giveaways. And I'm going to see you, of course, live on Tuesday at 11 AM with a brand new code for What's Hot. So have a fantastic week, everybody. I think that's, look at the time. I apologise if I've kept you longer than usual. So have a lovely weekend, and I will